Net studio host and contributor to Around the Horn, pardon the interruption, and Sirius XM NBA Radio, the starting lineup. Frank, the greatest unanswered sports question in history is?
Oh, ask your folks, because before you came on, they asked me, and that was one I came up with also. I said, Michael Jordan leaving for those 2 years, what exactly was the reason? And does Chicago, and you and I were around during that run, I believe they absolutely win those 2 championships, and maybe Michael Jordan would have won 8 in a row. And one other thing about you guys both mentioned, I had to laugh about the frozen envelope that might have been put in dry ice, the whole thing. I remember doing a story when I was at the Daily News because the Knicks were back in the lottery for the first time in a long time. And I got David Stern on the phone and I asked him 2 questions about the frozen envelope. And on the second one, he said, I think we should move on, Frank, before you keep continuing to accuse me of a felony. And, David Stern had that way about him. I said, yes, sir. And then I moved on to something else.
Do you think there will ever be a 30 for 30 on Michael Jordan and why he really went to play baseball? Or do you think there's going to be an expose on that he really went to play baseball because he was burned out with basketball and he wanted to do this because his dad always wanted him to try to play baseball?
Yeah. And I always think with these things, it's never just one thing. It's even when guys step away from coaching or from playing. I think his dad passing away probably had something to do with it. Maybe he really was worn down. Maybe he was in trouble with the league over something. It is funny. During the Last Dance, they did address it a bit. And they just, the rumor out there that maybe he was going to get in trouble for gambling. And instead of being suspended, he said, you know what, I'm just going to walk away for a while. And they asked 4 people about it. It was Brian McIntyre, who was David Stern's right-hand man, David Falk, Michael Jordan, and I believe David Stern was asked about it too. I think those would be the only 4 people in the world that would know the real story. And all 4 of them said, you're crazy. He just decided to walk away. I always was convinced those were the only 4 people that know the true story.
What do you think happened?
I think he was a little worn down. I think, being Michael Jordan probably got to him a little bit. Maybe he wanted another challenge. He had been spoken to about some of his ties to, who was the gambler that he played golf with. And maybe he said, you know what, I'm getting tired of being questioned about this stuff. You guys see how the league survives without me for a year. And maybe, again, I think it might have been a number of factors.
Last night at the ESPYs, it's the greatest night in sports because you work at ESPN and
yes,
you're supposed to. Love the ESPYs. Here is a portion of LeBron James' speech. LeBron James' speech.
Everything to the game still. Truth is, I've been asking myself this question at the end of the season for a couple years now. I just never openly talked about it. I don't care how many more points I score or what I can or cannot do on the floor. The real question for me is, can I play without cheating this game? The day I can't give the game everything on the floor is the day I'll be done. Lucky for you guys, that day is not today.
Okay, why is this a celebration? Who thought LeBron was going to retire?
Nobody did.
Okay.
But he gave us a story for like a day. And in the moments right after you lose a playoff game, guys say things that a week, 2 weeks, a month later don't really hold true. And let's remember something as well. All there was talk about him playing eventually one day with his son. His son is going to be at USC this year. I mean, if he stays 1 year, then LeBron will have a chance to play with him 2 years down the road. After talking about playing with his son all this time, you get eliminated by Denver, and he decides in that moment, I'm done. No one ever believed that. No one believed it for a moment. The thing, too, is, though, when he said cheating the game, I think the players today, they look at it a little bit different. I think LeBron knows at his age and the way that he plays and to stay healthy, he could probably give you 60 solid games during the regular season. Someone has got to take care about the other 20 to 22, and then I'll see you in the playoffs. That's the issue now. How can the Lakers survive without LeBron? Because you figure the days of him playing 70 games, I think, are over. It's probably more in the 60 range right now.
But I'm also wondering this. Does LeBron stay if he is not the number one option? Anthony Davis should be the number one option, but he has, failed in doing that.
Yeah. I think he wants Anthony Davis to be the number one option. That's kind of part of the problem. You watch the way the guy played during the playoffs. I'm talking about LeBron. He was still a dominant force. It's amazing on the one hand that at his age he could still do this, but I think there's part of him that says, come on, guys, somebody else needs to do this. Let me be part of it. Every once in a while, I'll have a great game. Because even when they were winning some of those playoff games, it wasn't like LeBron was giving you the 38-point triple-double. He was still playing well enough. He still makes those around him better, but he still needs a little bit of help here at this age.
Yeah, but I wonder, could he be a second or third option? Like, would his ego allow that to happen? Because he's become a jump shooter. He doesn't want the wear and tear of going to the hoop anymore. He is settling for jumpers, and he's not a good jump shooter. But I wonder, Anthony Davis could be the first option. They're not going to have a second option. But I wonder if he could get into that role of, like Chris Bosh did in Miami.
Exactly.
Where he became a third option for the betterment of the team.
If he went to, let's say, for argument's sake, he went to a place like Denver, I think he would certainly work in an ensemble cast there with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Maybe he'd be the second option if he ever made it to the Golden State Warriors. I think at this stage he would, and he certainly would if that team gets his son Bronny, and then LeBron wants to play there. If LeBron went to a team with already that dominant number one guy.
Do you really think he's going to play on a team with his son?
I think, you hear Brian Windhorst talk about it all the time. I think LeBron still wants to win a title, but I think the thing that would make it unique for him is to play with his son. Because remember, he's probably not going to get the 6 titles that Michael had, but he's got the all-time scoring record. And now he could do something that Michael never got to do. You're going to play with his son professionally. We still talk about when Ken Griffey Sr. played with Ken Griffey Jr., how incredible that was. For LeBron to be able to do that, to have that kind of staying power. But part of it, too, is that's LeBron's dream. What is his son's dream? I know this, Dan. His son is going to make about $4 to $6 million in NIL at USC.
Yeah.
It's kind of a nice life being on the USC campus. His son might look around and say, you know what? This might be better than just being at the end of somebody's bench in the NBA. Maybe I'll stick around USC for a while.
How do you think this plays out with Miami and Portland with Dame?
I think it eventually will happen. I love the fact that Joe Cronin has to come out and remind everyone. We get it. Pat Riley's great. He's the godfather. And the Miami Heat fans are all crazy. They think Damian Lillard should have been traded there a week ago. And you have the people in the media and NBA players think that Damian Lillard should just get whatever he wants. Well, Joe Cronin, his best interest is the Portland Trailblazers. And guess what? He's allowed to want to do what's best for Portland and get a good deal for them. No one knows Joe Cronin. So the first move that he's ever really going to make that people are paying attention to is trading one of the most popular players, if not the most popular player in franchise history. Is he allowed to get a good deal back for him? Or is it just about making Damian Lillard happy, the Miami Heat fan base happy, and Pat Riley happy? Like, it'll happen at some point, but it's complicated, Dan. It's probably going to include multiple teams. When you do that, these trades tend to take a while.
I know you spent time at the Summer League, and I always like to see what competition you're facing. So Victor Wembanyama, I think we were looking at him. We weren't necessarily looking at the competition. It was just him. He was sort of the only guy out there, even though there were 9 other players on the floor. The biggest question that you still have about Victor Wembanyama is what?
Well, I would think physically, can he hold up? Because Chet Holmgren, who has been dominant in Summer League, it's his second year in the league. He missed all of last season. He got hurt playing that Pro-Am out in Seattle. So that to me would be the big thing. Physically, can he hold up well enough? Because the first game that he played, he was not good offensively. Why people just couldn't say that? It doesn't mean that he's not going to be a good player. Yeah. Doesn't mean that he's a bust. But I just found it weird that everyone was trying. There's a million excuses why he didn't play that well. He's 19. He just finished a season in the French league. All the attention, the pressure, maybe the Britney Spears thing had something to do with the sold-out crowd. But let's acknowledge that he didn't have a good game offensively. Defensively, he was pretty good. And then he had a good bounce-back game on Sunday, and then they decided to shut him down. I know this. Greg Popovich, who usually during Summer League is hanging out, I think he's got a house up in Maine. He was there for both of Victor Wembanyama's games. So clearly it means something to Greg Popovich, enough so that he got a 5-year contract extension as well.
If they got Scoot Henderson and not Victor Wembanyama, is Greg Popovich signing a 5-year contract?
I don't think he is. And that's why, and you know this, when you look at the teams that were going to be in the lottery, I kept thinking he's either going to go to Orlando, who always seems to get a center, Shaq and Dwight Howard, or the Rockets, if Ralph Sampson, Akeem, Yao Ming, or he's going to go to San Antonio, the team that always gets lucky, David Robinson, Tim Duncan. Sure enough, it ends up being the San Antonio Spurs. And I think you're right. I think that Greg Popovich looks at it as a challenge. Remember how many people had said Greg Popovich will leave when Tim Duncan leaves. Tim Duncan's been out of the league a long time, and Greg Popovich still is just signed a 5-year deal, so he's not giving up anytime soon.
Good to talk to you, Frank. Thanks for joining us as always.
Good seeing you, Dan. Take care.
Frank Isola, Nets studio host and contributor to Around the Horn, and pardon the interruption.